Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. It's your boo, the Papatoi Panther, wearing the South Auckland slippers, here with the Wobbly Wildcard, snuggle down in the noisy north of Aotearoa. And this is another episode of the Niche Cast where we're going to chat through. We've got some Blackcaps. They've got an ODI series against Bangladesh coming up. We have the Warriors. They play the Gold Coast Titans a Friday night. We're recording this on the Thursday, so we'll wiggle our way through that situation, and then we're going to do mostly a bit of football chat here, wrapping up Kiwi footballing matters, Wellington Phoenix and Flying Kiwis. Check out the Niche Cage Variety Show. That's the buffet of quick, hard Kiwi sporting chat, and we do our Patreon episode for our Patreons every Monday and Friday. We're delivering an email hitter, so check out that if you can. And of course, read all about Kiwi sports business at the niche-case.com. Wobbly Wildcard, what is crack-a-lackin'? Do you have a pocket of mindfulness?
Only a pocket today? Well, we'll see how it goes.
Well, it's the theme. It's the theme of Hot Pockets today, so
okay,
you're going with the hot pocket.
Gotcha. Yeah, so normally I read these off my phone, so I've got them nice and ready. But this is one I heard on a podcast the other day, so I'll try to remember it as word for word as I can. It goes, enlightenment is the ultimate insult to the ego.
Oh, it definitely is. Because they're two different forces working against each other. In yourself. That's the battle. That's the journey.
Yeah, and I don't know that anyone ever actually gets enlightened. I think it's less of a case of like this is an achievable goal and more of a case of like you try anyway. Like it's more about the journey than the destination, one of those kind of things. And yeah, I think a constant hurdle along the way is that the ego is actually kind of preventing these kind of things in many cases.
I actually used the word enlighten in the first sentence of my New Zealand Warriors diary entry today, because I thought that the game against the Newcastle Knights will enlighten the Warriors and their fans about the Warriors forward pack, which wasn't the best use of enlightened, but maybe that's the theme of what we're working with here. Just a bit of enlightenment happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's enlightenment and there's metaphorical enlightenment. It all works the same. The metaphor is like the metaphor is the opposite of the ultimate insult. The metaphor is the ultimate tool for the writer in a way. Like it's much easier to write stuff when you can just compare stuff to other things. It saves all the words of trying to actually describe things. It's nice. It's nice in that way. Tricks of the trade.
Righty here. And I like enlighten roundabout, maybe it means to bring a light to something. That seems like a couple of dots that are easy to connect, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to bring light to some New Zealand Warriors matters, some Kiwi footballing matters, and of course, Blackcaps cricket wildcard. ODI series versus Bangladesh, straight off the back of that 5-game T20 banger against Australia. And I've got two big ideas here, wildcard, with the Blackcaps ODI team. Obviously, ODI cricket's in a weird space as well, so keep that in mind. We're in an awkward state of a World Cup cycle, and I think more importantly, this is a very isolated ODI series. So that, forget World Cups, it's like if you've just got one little random ODI series amongst a lot of T20 cricket and Test cricket, it's just weird all around. But, I mean, what makes straight up and down common sense these days? No Ross Taylor, no Kane Williamson, and so wildcard. Naturally, that places a greater responsibility on the senior batsmen who are playing, who are Tom Latham and Henry Nicholls, both of whom I've talked and written a lot about over the past few weeks, because they're both in amazing form this summer. In this specific format, the 50-over format, Henry Nicholls scored 365 runs in the Ford Trophy at an average of 121 strike rate of 91, 2 centuries in 5 games. Tommy Latham, who I had right there a second ago. Tommy Latham, 280 runs at an average of 70, strike rate over 100, 113, 1 century and 150. And I believe, to the best of my knowledge, that their last 9 games in which Tom Latham and Henry Nicholls have batted together, there has been at least one 50-plus score from either of them. And that's across different formats as well. So the Tom Latham, Henry Nicholls combination, let alone as individuals, that combination has been on fire this summer. Hence Canterbury are easily, maybe, Canterbury are the best domestic association of this summer. Recently, that is due to Henry Nicholls and Tom Latham, and here they are as the senior batsmen of the Blackcaps ODI team. All comes together as a very interesting time for these two in these Blackcaps jerseys.
Yeah, it's a it's like an island, this series, isn't it? Like there's so much else going on where we're pretty deep in the build up to a 2020 World Cup that's already been delayed once. Actually, this isn't the delayed one, is it? The delayed one happens after this. Is actually in a build up for a delayed 2020 World Cup with another 2020 World Cup coming before that one. Not to mention the ICC Test Championship. And on that note, I did just have to look this up because I actually haven't really heard it mentioned anywhere else. But there is an ODI Test Championship. There is an ICC ODI Championship thingy going concurrently with the Test Championship one, started a year and a half later or something. And these are actually our first games that are a part of that. So I'm just looking at the scoreboard, and every single team of the 13 that are involved, except for New Zealand, South Africa, and Netherlands, have had a series. A couple of them have had 2 series. So this is us getting on the board. So they are important points. Like we do have to try win all 3 of these games, at least as far as that. I don't even know how that tournament is going to function, but I assume it's the same as the test one. So there is something on the line there. But yeah, it's Bangladesh and New Zealand, which is a very different prospect to Bangladesh and Bangladesh. So you'd bank on 3 Blackcaps victories. That's normally how these things go when subcontinent teams tour here and we're, on form, and there is that factor. We haven't played any ODI cricket for a long time, but most of these dudes have been playing domestically ODI, one-day stuff, so that's all sweet. I don't see any reason why we should be too worried about this all, but I think there's an interesting factor here with the selections, because, like as you say, Henry Nicholls and Tom Latham kind of I would say two very underrated guys in our starting ODI team. Like Henry Nicholls, I don't know if I can say famously because I think people forget it, but it should be famous at least. He did score a 50 opening the batting in the World Cup final. Like I'm pretty sure he top scored in that innings. So, and he's been in consistently good form at most stuff that he's done ever since then. There was a little dip in his test form and he triumphantly recovered from that. But without Williamson, without that safety blanket, I suppose, of Williamson and Taylor, who, probably our 2 best one-day international batsmen in history. I mean, they might be our 2 best batsmen full stop in history. Without that, and with the addition of Devon Conway into the scene, I think there's an interesting little dynamic there, because a lot of people would probably be arguing, and I have seen this, these takes being Conway's just got to play all 3 formats. It doesn't matter who you drop. He has to be in there kind of argument. And here we're going to get a situation where, I think ordinarily Henry Nicholls would be the guy who people would point at, therefore, and instead we're going to see a situation where, because of the unavailability of Williamson and then Taylor for at least the first game, Conway's going to be playing all 3 of these games without having to push in ahead of anyone else. So there might be a little interesting little head-to-head there and seeing how that goes. I'm not sure. Was it Will Young is in the squad as well? I think maybe he gets games. Mark Chapman was called up as well to replace Taylor, potentially if there's a spinning track in Dunedin, which somehow I doubt that will be the case. I expect Will Young still gets that go at 4, but potentially Chapman could get a go. The other one is Colin de Grandhomme has had ankle surgery, and he's out for, he's probably in a race against time to try to be fit for the Test series in England, including the championship at the end of that. He has been a first-choice player in our ODI squad as well, and he's already, through absence and other people coming in and doing pretty well, probably already lost a spot in the 2020 team. He's an interesting sort of factor there as well. So there's a few little things there in terms of like guys who are missing out, guys who are going to get a chance, guys who therefore get to make statements and try to push their cases. There's quite a few little factors at play in this mini little island of a series, including that getting the whole ODI championship thing up and running for New Zealand as well.
Been a hot year since Colin de Grandhomme last played international cricket. A quick old year. The old pandemic year also featured no international cricket for Colin de Grandhomme. Whenever I write about domestic cricket, I'm always kind of touching base with Mr. CDG. What would you... I think if he's healthy, he's going to be in the Test squad, for example. I don't know how much cricket for New Zealand Colin de Grandhomme is going to play in the next 12 months. And if he doesn't play much in the next 12 months, I think you can extrapolate that out to further years as well. Are you...
Well, he's 34 years old as well, so it's not like he's got the rest of his career ahead of him. I mean, he does, but that means something different to him than it does for, say, Kyle Jamieson or Glenn Phillips or whatever. Or even Daryl Mitchell, who's a few years younger,
Yeah, maybe we're seeing that physically play out with the injuries he's having. Otherwise, he just doesn't seem like someone who's going to feel the effects. He always moves at the same pace. He's not going to, slow down. Colin de Grandhomme isn't going to slow down. He's already easily the slowest dude in that Blackcap setup. By slow, I just mean his vibe. He's very relaxed, He's very mellow. So I don't think more injuries he doesn't offer a physical gift. He offers a pure
strength,
cricketing.
But yeah,
it's cricketing strength. Right, he everything is cricket related with him, hand-eye coordination, power in a cricketing sense. So he might be one of these dudes who could play on a bit just because everything about him is cricket. It's not necessarily Kyle Jamieson trying to figure out how to be a test bowler at 34 years of age. Everything his body's been through, it's very different scenarios. Speaking of Kyle Jamieson, I think he's in a really interesting space as well, because he's coming off that T20 series, which came off his IPL auction, where he wasn't so good, but I think he's going to be okay in the series because his length didn't suit T20 cricket against Australia, I don't think. Whereas if he's bowling his natural length in an ODI series, I think that automatically helps him a little bit, because batsmen are slightly more defensive or apprehensive. T20 cricket, you're looking to score runs, different mentality. You can attack his natural length, but I think ODI cricket, if he gets his length right, it's going to be okay. And also, they're playing Bangladesh, who are they fall into that touring subcontinent team. It's not like Marcus Stoinis just heaving good length deliveries for 6. I don't really see any Bangladeshi batsmen doing that or having that's not how they go about their business. So, this is just an interesting challenge for Jamieson. He did perform well against India previously, so maybe that's another opening to how this series might go for Jamieson against these touring Asian batsmen.
Yeah, and he's one who's likely to... I should probably look up the squad while I say this, but he's probably one who will take for one thing, he'll take the overs off of what Colin de Grandhomme would have bowled. He'll probably slide in maybe in the same sort of role in the batting order as well. It doesn't, you sort of don't want to be banking on your guys below 7 anyway, so that doesn't really matter so much in ODIs and even less so in 2020s. But where's the who? Because Daryl Mitchell's in the squad.
I think Daryl Mitchell's
that's what I was looking up to try.
Daryl Mitchell's, but he's the like-for-like replacement for Colin de Grandhomme. I think Jamieson is still a bowler who can bat. Yeah, so and then think of, like, if Jamieson, maybe there's some mental thing that's happened and he just, can't quite hit the heights, everyone's expecting him to sustain and maintain such a high level of performance that I don't know if that's possible. And New Zealand cricket's in a good enough position where you've got an X factor like Lockie Ferguson waiting. He is waiting for an opportunity. And usually we're lucky if we've got one X factor bowler. Right now, we've got one in Jamieson, who's pretty hot. Big picture, he's hot. And then you've got Ferguson, who kind of needs to just be healthy. That's the biggest thing for Ferguson right now. So it's good for New Zealand cricket. The sole presence of Ferguson coming back is going to keep a bit of pressure on those New Zealand seamers as well.
Yeah, he's kind of been forgotten a little bit, and I think because just looking at some of the bowling performances in that series against Australia, a couple games in particular were rather terrible. Our best two bowlers in that series were the two spinners as well, so that puts even more of a focus, and Kyle Jamieson was the worst of the guys who played the most. He was just straight up bad in that series, but as you say, there's mitigating factors. But yeah, the absence of Lockie Ferguson, it's important not to forget that he has been our best white ball bowler over the last probably 2 years. He hasn't been there. This has not been a full strength Blackcaps 2020 bowling lineup without Lockie Ferguson, and it will not be one without him in the ODI team as well. I'm just looking at what the bowling lineup will likely be. I expect there'll be a little bit of rotation being a series against Bangladesh and whatnot, but Matt Henry is the other one who, he did get a test earlier in the summer, didn't he? And he's done some nice things at domestic level. He always does nice things at domestic level. He's another one of those Guptill syndrome type guys where and I don't know how much he'll play because it might be him versus Jamieson in terms of selection, or maybe they won't pick Mitchell and, suffice with Jimmy Neesham there. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I expect probably all 13 of the dudes in the squad will get at least one game because there's no Hamish Bennett type selection in this group. But yeah, Matt Henry is another one who probably has a little bit to prove. So it'll be interesting to see how there's not really much more to say on that, but it will be nice to see him get a go in the one format where he really, really excels at international level. Because he excels at all three domestically, not so much when he's gotten the chance to play for the Blackcaps, except for he is an ODI wicket taker, and that's another factor not to ignore when it comes to someone like that. And when it comes to looking at what the Blackcaps bowling lineup looks like, what their stocks look like, what the depth is like, because it's probably better than it appears, I think. I can't really think of a time when we've had a squad where you think this is a solid, respectable, could do a job in most countries in the world ODI bowling lineup, which also doesn't include 2 or 3 of with Ferguson and also, to be fair, de Grandhomme as well, absent. Also missing a couple of important players and still looks pretty handy, so yeah.
Matt Henry, bit of the Martin Guptill. Your favourite Kiwi cricket
exactly
trope is the Martin Guptill. Shout out to Guppy Gang as well. They were paid out in full with Martin Guptill, how he's finished the summer. Love a bit of Guptill staring at the dirt, don't we? Let's go a bit of rugby league here, Wildcard. I just want to start with some housekeeping for the Warriors, because just something we're keeping an eye on is just how the club's connection with Redcliffe Dolphins is working. And I think I'm continuing to learn and I'm continuing to follow this because I think it's really important just to know how these systems are being developed and built when they're not in New Zealand, which I think is quite interesting. And this week, and it's all timely as well, because we got our first team list. So, first team list of the Intra Super Cup. I'm referring to them as the Redcliffe Aihi. Aihi is Māori for dolphin. So it's like, you can't say that they are the New Zealand Dolphins because they're in Redcliffe. So that's just the twist I came up with. So Warriors who are playing for the Redcliffe Dolphins this week, you've got Hayes Perham at fullback. You've got Rocco Berry and Viliami Vailea in the centres. Paul Turner is in the halves. Edward Kosi is on a wing. He's more of a certified Warriors reserve grader. Then you've got all middle trio. Jackson Frey, Kane Evans, and Pride Pedersen Robati, who was recently signed by the Warriors, and Preston Ricky coming off the bench. Two interesting bits and bobs here. You've got last season Rocco Berry started at fullback in the reserve grade competition, and Hayes Perham played NRL at centre. Nathan Brown comes in as coach, and suddenly Hayes Perham is at fullback, Rocco Berry is at centre. Also, another twist there is that we had the Roger Tuivasa-Sheck news, so Hayes Perham is the fullback of reserve grades, which is a good sign for him. Also a good sign for Rocco Berry. He might just be better suited at centre. The other thing here is Viliami Vailea was playing SG ball for the Warriors last year while he was at Aorere College. High school top 200, for what it's worth, had him ranked as the 8th best first 15 player in New Zealand. Like, to amplify this notion of maybe this guy's really good, he was playing SG ball last year, and now he's playing reserve grade against men. He was at high school playing under 18s last year, now he's in reserve grade starting centre. No one else from his SG ball team at the Warriors is doing that. Like, even Sione Moala, who was the halfback for the Warriors SG ball team, he's playing under 18s for the Canberra Raiders. The three boys at the Tigers, Jani Proctor-Hayward, Tamahana Peruru, and Trey Lelosio, they played Warriors SG ball last year. Now they're playing Tigers SG ball. In the Redcliffe Dolphins under 18 team, mentioned it last week, Eric Vafusanga and Sebastian Jack, under 18 Warriors last year, under 18 Redcliffe Dolphins this year. So Viliami Vailea has come from nowhere to be the starting centre of the Warriors reserve grade team, and I think that's pretty interesting, really interesting there. So a couple wider Warriors business matters to take care of.
Yeah, and then when we get to the old first grade team, we got where are we? Friday night game against the Newcastle Knights, which is handy. So I'm just looking at the team list that's been named, and this is, I believe, a Kalen Ponga-less Knights team. He's still out injured. Don't know what his time frame is. I've had a weird experience of coming back to the NRL where I just kind of disengaged with everything in the off season. So, and there just weren't that many trial games and stuff because they're trying, for obvious reasons. So I've just last week was a bit of diving straight into the deep end and picking up, oh, so-and-so's injured? Oh, I forgot about that. Or, where's Sean Johnson for the Sharks? And wait, he smashed his ankle in half or whatever it was, or his Achilles or whatever the injury was. That's right. He's still going to be out for at least another few months after this. And things like that, just picking up, oh, so the Tyson Frizzell doesn't play for the Dragons anymore. Oh, that sucks. I forgot about that. Forgot how much that sucked, and now I remember how much it sucked. And he'll actually be playing for the Knights against the Warriors this week. So there's been a few just me personally. I've had a few of those weird I should have known this, but I've forgotten this moments. But nothing really of note is there in the Warriors lineup. It's almost identical to the team that beat the Titans, except for Ewan Aitken, who's had a unfortunately kind of a serious injury on debut, so he's going to be out for a little while now. And Adam Pompey comes in at centre in place of him. It's not too much to speak about in terms of the team list, but thinking more in terms of performance and whatnot, what are you going to be looking for then for the Warriors in Game 2? Because we've had a pretty tidy Game 1, but it's often the case where, like, early on in any season, you never quite know if this is the exception or the rule, and it's not until you start getting 2 or 3 games and you can start to see patterns in performances, and it's not just like, oh, this happened because of the opposition, or this happened because it was just a good day or a bad day or whatnot. It's not until you start getting 2 or 3 where you can start connecting dots and seeing through lines and whatnot. So, what kind of things are you looking for in Game 2 from the Warriors?
Just a quick word on Adam Pompey, because, like, again, I'm just trying to, like, look through what is happening. You get an injury to a first-choice center, straight away Adam Pompey's in. So that tells me Adam Pompey has made a good impression on the new coach. Because as I'm seeing across the whole NRL, and this kind of goes to your point about having to quickly tap back in with the NRL, like, it's a slow burn because from my Kiwi NRL perspective, a lot of the Kiwi NRL players who are playing last year, they're playing reserve grade this year in both competitions. There's an absolute truckload of them. And a lot of these teams who don't quite perform, I think there's going to be an influx. Like, the Kiwi NRL numbers are going to go up as the season progresses, because in different situations, those players have gone back to reserve grade. They've dropped down a level. And my hunch is that, like, they'll find their way through at some point. So it's like, that's kind of the beauty of an NRL season, is there's so many twists and turns that you can have a moment where everything's changed in the league. So I wouldn't get too attached to what you're seeing now as far as team lists. Like, if you're coming in hot, I think you'll just repeat that cycle at some stage later on this year, because you'll be playing like, what the fuck's this guy doing? He wasn't there at the start, and this goes back, and blah blah blah. Patterns for the Warriors. Adam Pompey, really promising player who was scouted by the Roosters straight out of Wesley College, did all their SG ball stuff, so that's a good sign. Hasn't quite shown, I think, what he's capable of, and that's why I'm interested, because he would have spent the season working with the new coaching staff, and if you base it on what we saw last year, like, you'll be like, okay, cool, Adam Pompey's in, and I'm curious to see if the coaches have based off what they've seen over the summer, and I'm curious to see if that's then manifested in this game. Patterns. Chanel Harris-Tavita's defense was the seed of a pattern, maybe, so I'm interested to see if that becomes a pattern. Is Chanel Harris-Tavita going to whack blokes every tackle, every week? Can't do it every tackle, so is he going to have that attitude every week? That's a little pattern to keep an eye on. Another pattern, I think it's a good thing if you don't really think too much about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Like, I didn't even mention Roger Tuivasa-Sheck in my debrief of last week's game. And you check the stats and he's putting up like typical RTS numbers, but he's not carrying the team. He wasn't, like, he was obviously captain, he's leading the energy and stuff like that, but all the little moments that got the Warriors ahead in that game, other than his defense, which is spectacular, but he's not making 50-meter breaks just to keep the Warriors in the contest. They won the game with strong contributions throughout their team. So if you don't know that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is having an outlandish game, I think that's an interesting pattern to watch out for. Can the Warriors compete against the dominant forward pack like the Knights? The Knights were fantastic up the middle last week, and the Warriors have a low-key, really solid forward pack. Like, their young guns played a full season last season and went through what they went through last season. Tanoa Brown, Iliasa Katoa did have some injuries, but he was there throughout all the bullshit. So when you're thinking Whenua Blake, Wade Egan's been around, Tanoa Brown, Katoa, Bailey Suranen, Tohu Harris, Tavanga, Murdoch Masila, Aumau, Afoa, there's no, like, weak spot there. And I think maybe the depth and the breadth of that Warriors forward pack could be really important, and it's going to be tested. We're going to be enlightened about this Warriors forward pack coming up against such a hefty Knights pack featuring just a bit of Tyson Frizzell out on the edge, you know?
Yeah, he'll get you. That's for sure. That's a strong Knights team, eh? It's a really interesting strong Knights team because they got a lot of, they've Mitchell Pearce, hugely experienced halfback. They've got guys like Clemmer and Frizzell, big experience there. Also, then just filling in around them is so many up and coming. This dude is going to be a fantastic player. This dude probably already is a fantastic player. Level of players they've got a. Especially when you chuck in Kalen Ponga when he comes back as well into that mix, there's maybe a little bit too much inexperience to be talking about title contenders. You never know with those kind of things because inexperience doesn't mean bad. It just means we don't know yet. It's an unknown. It's not a negative. But man, it's definitely a team which is going to be exciting, and it's stacked with interesting players, interesting young players who haven't played that much. They kind of, that's a nice little mix there. What's their Kiwi NRL stocks like? Because they do look a little bit light on that.
The Knights, I think this version of the Knights, what you're seeing, just quickly, and this is exactly what we're going to find out when the Warriors play them. There could be an illusion there because until Kalen Ponga returns, he changes the complexion of this team dramatically, but Kurt Mann doesn't kick the ball.
Doesn't catch the ball either. Against when he was a Dragons player.
Yeah, exactly. So they're Mitchell Pearce did 13 kicks last week and Kurt Mann had 1. So the Bulldogs, and Mitchell Pearce, I think they combined for 21 tackles. Nikorima and Harris Tavita combined for 46 tackles last week. And the Bulldogs sucked. They were just normal Bulldogs of the past 2 seasons, and the Knights didn't really have to do too much. So I'm just interested when they come up, I'm interested if the Warriors are this type of team where there is a clear plan. Just fucking everyone knows Mitchell Pearce is the kicker of the ball, so make it uncomfortable for him. That's what the Melbourne Storm do. That's what the Roosters do. That's what the best teams do, is they have those clear little isolation plays. We're going to take this away from you. Or we're going to just make your regular programming a little bit uncomfortable, and we'll see how you can deal with it. And maybe this is where part of the enlightenment comes in with the Warriors, is we're going to see if the Warriors have shades of that in their work. Because there was a bit of it last week, just clear, concise, this is who we are, this is what we do. And I'm interested to see how that develops. The Knights, this is a perfect example of what I was talking about, Wildcard. They have Stafford Toll is the only certified Kiwi NRL player in their NRL team, but when you go reserve grade, that's where the goodness is. They've got a young dude, Simi Sasangi, who is, I think he's playing in their halves for reserve grade. I'm just trying to whip that one up. They have Jura Momosia. He's a big forward who, unfortunately, I think he had a season-ending injury in pre-season. So Simi Sasangi is starting in the halves for the reserve grade team. He was recruited by the Knights out of Auckland. Christian Matanaima, I think he's from the North Shore of Auckland. He is on the Knights reserve grade bench. Daniel Ticehurst is also on the Knights reserve grade bench. He played for the Junior Kiwis under-19 team. He is about as ruthless mullet-wearing rugby league player as you're going to get. And then also they've got another dude, John Taliafoa, who I don't know. I thought I knew, but I don't know. So they've got a couple there, and they've got Sam McIntyre was fantastic in the New Zealand schools versus clubs game last year. He's with the Knights as well, so that's really important. Thank you for bringing it up, because it just shows a lot of the Kiwi NRL talent now is just below the NRL. And I thought that some of these dudes might get a crack to start the season. That wasn't the case, and it was the case across the whole NRL. This was like how it was. You look at the Rabbitohs. Jackson Paulo started on the wing a bunch of games for the Rabbitohs last season. Josh Mansour comes to the club. He's starting on the wing, and then Wayne Bennett drops Mansour and calls up Jackson Paulo. So those little situations are going to happen over the next few weeks, and especially mid-season, and we're going to see all that Kiwi NRL talent come through, because it's all in reserve grade. They're all development players. They're all jersey flag. It's there, and I'm kind of, it's overwhelming. That's how many Kiwi NRL players are coming through. Let's tap into a bit of football here, Wildcard. I've got 3 major questions that are going to take us around the world of Kiwi football. But of course, we've got to start a bit closer to home, because things are pretty fun on the Wellington Phoenix beat. Plenty of goals, although they didn't win that game against Western Sydney Wanderers. There were some big goals. Did Devlin hit that one from outside the box?
Yeah, absolute thunder bastard. His first goal for the club, actually. I think he had scored before at the A-League level. He had scored for Sydney FC back when he was even younger than he is now. But yeah, rocket of a shot. Did not see that one coming.
So it feels like the Wellington Phoenix have turned somewhat of a corner, but they're still 10th. They're 2-2 in their last 5 games, which isn't the worst. But I do feel like they're moving in the right direction. Stephen Taylor's coming back. They're scoring goals now, which is might be the answer to this question. But I think that's where the vibe that they've turned a corner comes from, is that they are scoring goals. So, which makes them an entertaining team, which makes them a fun team, which makes them a fun beat to cover. So my question to you, Wildcard, is what has changed or developed for the Wellington Phoenix in recent weeks?
Yeah, I think probably around the time, like, it definitely got to a point where something did have to change, and Ufuk did make several pretty notable changes to the to his starting lineup, and he's stuck pretty firm with that since. Like, there was that point where just everyone was injured. It was a little bit by necessity, but then he started getting decent results with what at the start of the season, so what was a very different 11 to what he started the season with like Tim Payne sliding into centre back, Liam McGinn coming out of he probably would have been like the 5th choice centre back at the start of things, and suddenly he's starting, and those two had a couple clean sheets together. Ollie Sale as well came in and did well enough that he couldn't be dropped back out of it, and then the team getting results as well. Also, Talai has been a manager throughout his tenure with the Phoenix who, if you might have to wait a long time to get a chance, but if you take that chance, he's going to show faith in you from that point on. Like, he doesn't drop players very lightly. He tends to stick with the hot hand kind of thing. So, Sale's stuck in goal. Payne and McGinn have forged a little bit of a combination there at centre back. That means Louis Fenton's come back in at right back to get an opportunity there. Lewis and Rufer have been starting in central midfield. The game on the weekend was actually quite a funky one, because Fenton then got injured in warm-ups, and Cam Devlin came in, who probably should have been starting really on ability, but it was one of those things, like, he's sticking with the duo that had been getting the job done. So Devlin was on the bench. Devlin comes into midfield, but then Rufer, who had been meant to start at midfield, goes to right back. Couple reasons why that was a little bit odd, and I think maybe not having Rufer in the middle there did cost them, just that extra physical presence. I think Rufer and Devlin is still comfortably the best central midfield pairing that the club has, but he didn't want to disrupt the centre-back partnership, so I can understand that, and Rufer was the one who, of the quartet, who could most easily do that role at right back. Once he wanted to get the best player that he had on the bench into the team, because you could have picked someone like Redenton, who's got a little more experience there. But you can make an argument that backfired. You can also make an argument that it had nothing to do with the way it went. There was one goal where Rufer's positioning was just not good enough. That's understandable when the guy's playing out of position, but yeah, that like so I guess what I'm saying is there were a lot of, because to answer the question, there were changes in personnel, and then that led to good results, and then these guys get stuck with, persisted with because of, good form, and then that leads to confidence, and then confidence leads to just slightly better decisions, slightly quicker decisions. Ulysses Davia's been playing fantastic throughout, but he still is playing fantastic. He's just like, he's in not even a year and a half at the club. I'm struggling to think of more than a couple of players, import players who have played at a higher level than him. He's bloody phenomenon. All those things are nice, and that just goes to show, like, the stuff at the start of the season, they were really fine margins. Like, they weren't losing by a lot. They were dominating games and not scoring goals. And so, yeah, getting the ball in the back of the net makes a difference, and just a bit of confidence and a bit of belief that comes from that. It can just be that quickly, like, it can change that quickly. What I will say is, to take your question a step further, I suspect we might, in that it was Western City, wasn't in that game, we might have seen, like, a case of some of those changes maybe, like, outliving their use-by day. Like, Stephen Taylor will come back into this team as the starting centre-back when he's done his quarantines and whatnot, and it shouldn't be more than a game or two away, hopefully. Maybe he needs to do some fitness, I don't know, but he only just finished his season in India, so I should think he's pretty well match fit as it is. Yeah, I think some of the goals that they conceded in that game are a good sign that it's been a nice little run with this defensive combinations, but there's just a few too many players who, no one's playing at a level where they can keep Stephen Taylor at, I'll put it that way. Like, I think a couple of the goals they've conceded have just been ugly and maybe would not have been conceded with Taylor in there. So that's a point to consider. It's been nice. It's been a sweet little turnaround. Also, job is not done. They need to recover the ground that they lost for the slow start. And Taylor's addition is still going to make an enormous difference. Just because they had a couple nice results does not mean that that's necessarily sustainable throughout the whole rest of the season. I'll just put it that way.
Which of the Flying Kiwis has had the best start to 2021? So this is strictly calendar year. So it might be like back half of some of these seasons. Maybe some, like, every season. We've got such a spread of Flying Kiwis talent that it's like these competitions are happening all around the world. So these seasons are going across different seasons, and they're all starting at different times. So that plays into it. Who has had the best start to 2021?
That's an interesting question, because there's a few. I have a name in my head I'll come back around to, but there's a few people who have done, like, really fascinating or, successful things or whatever. CJ Bott playing in the Champions League is an example of that, and Chris Wood getting back to some scoring form just recently with a few goals in his last couple games. That all that kind of stuff is awesome, and even just someone like at a lower level, like, God, it's been a relief to see Nick Zanev finally getting a couple games for AFC Wimbledon as well, because they had the opportunity to make him he'd been their backup keeper. He'd sort of like been working his way up from the youth team to like third stringer, going out on loan in the back half of the season, to this year he was finally at like the highest level of backup goalkeeper, which is backup goalkeeper in league games and starting cup games. He was at that level, which is a trend that you see quite often in football. And their starting goalkeeper had been recalled on loan to go back to, I think, Birmingham, and they could have chucked him in as their full-time starter from that point on. It would have felt like a natural progression. Instead, they signed a guy from outside the club who came in and was bloody terrible. But he just got injured, and so Zanev had a couple games in a row and done well. So, like, that's just been a much more undercover sort of story that I've been following and just waiting for that big breakout kind of moment. There's one that's, I've been taken away for, and lovely to see him take that. But yeah, I think it's very, very hard to overlook Winston Reid for the best 2021, because factoring in his 2021, you have to think of all what he did in 2020 and 2019 and the injuries he's had to overcome, and the way it's kind of like just put a a very, very abrupt halt on his Premier League career, and West Ham would probably happily have sold him by now or released him or whatever, were it not for the very hefty contract that he signed with them not too long before he got injured, which is really, I won't say it saved his career, but it's definitely been a lifeline that's helped him through it. Did nicely late last year with Sporting Kansas City in the MLS. Like, that was the real comeback for him. But working his way so quickly into the starting 11 for Brentford, who were a team that had a couple hiccups lately, but they're still a team very firmly trying to get promotion to the Premier League, a dominant championship team, and he's been very good for them in the games that he's played. Seeing Winston Reid at that level, and it's not just the level he's playing as well, it's like the whole Winston Reid experience. Like, there was one in his most recent game where he, they drew 2-2 with Derby County, who are managed by Wayne Rooney now, which is a weird, speaking earlier of like the weird kind of like shake up moments in your brain, in my brain, coming to terms with NRL things that I'd missed or forgotten, which everyone else seemed to know. That was a weird one as well, watching Wayne Rooney just like dressed all formally on the touchline shouting instructions and whatnot. You still get the feeling that he kind of, a part of him still wants to like rip off the trackies and chuck on a jersey and lace up the boots and run out there himself and do it. But yeah, there was a moment late in that game where Winston Reid goes up for a defensive header off a long goal kick, and then the striker just can't hang with him, and he sort of like flails and he smacks him in the face with the back of his hand. And Winston Reid gave him the dirty eyes like you wouldn't believe. It's like he was ready to he pulled out the big index finger, like pointing him, like poking a hole in his chest, being like, "Oi, mate, like, none of that, thank you very much." And both teams kind of ran in to break everything up. It's like he's not just out there working his way back up to fitness. Like, this is fully confident Winston Reid. He's very assured, knows exactly what he's doing, and taking no shit from nobody. So that's been beautiful to see. And just because he's such a high achieving guy in that Flying Kiwis rankings, to get him back to that kind of level it's been beautiful. It's been a beautiful last couple months for him.
Last one here. What is the hottest region for Flying Kiwis around the world, alternatively known in the streets as the Hot Pocket? Where's the hottest pocket of Kiwi NRL talent right now, internationally, or is there some little hot pocket within Aotearoa that has caught your eye as well?
Freudian slip there. So Kiwi NRL. It's a very similar kind of parallel rise, I think, between the two. I don't know. In terms of overseas, like, it's normally, I don't know, England or Scandinavia or America. I think England is making a decent little push at the moment. Because you've got you've got Rhea Percival and Chris Wood leading the way in the top flights, playing, every game, being influential players. You've also got like Winston Reid in the second flight there, as well as Katie Rood and especially Michaela Moore on the women's side of things, where Michaela Moore's really, she seems to have done something very similar to Winston Reid, albeit over like a longer stretch of time, because she's been with Liverpool this whole season. But she's basically their first choice part of the first choice starting centre back combination, because their other centre back is the captain of the club, so you don't oust the captain straight away. But yeah, she's had a big emergence with them and doing lovely things, which is basically what she's done at every level of her career. Every time she's stepped up to a new level, she's made it her own pretty instantly. Yeah, I mean, I also don't want to say England because it's the obvious traditional answer. We will see, because the Scandinavian season and the American seasons are just coming up to starting. Like, they've been in their off season, so there haven't been much of a focus on those in the Flying Kiwis articles recently. But it could very well. I mean, the answer is probably still one of those two, and it might well be America. And in the MLS/USL season /NWSL seasons are all starting up in about a month's time. So that one is, I think I probably still got to go with America, especially when you consider how many players go there for like college stuff to get the start to their career, who don't necessarily then go on and play in America. Like Joe Bell is probably the highest achieving example of that, but a lot of players go over there just to get a start and then go elsewhere as well. So yeah, it'd be hard not to pick America. The funkier one probably that side to the question there is the local geographical kind of scene, because I think traditionally you'd probably say most of the top players have come from Auckland over the last 30 years. However, that's almost, it's a little bit tricky to say, but like the two highest level, what would you call them, like academies out there in the country, like the two best pathways for producing professional footballers have been, are now the Wellington Phoenix and the Ole Academy, both based out of Wellington. Also, both because of their achievements and reputations, you do get players coming from elsewhere in the country to attend those. So you do get a lot of Aucklanders moving to Wellington to play. Joe Bell is another one, to use him as an example again. Like, he's actually from Christchurch, went to Wellington to play for the Wellington Phoenix, then went to the States to play for Virginia and at university level, then went to Norway to play professionally for Vikings. So it's a funky one, because it's a little bit hard to, like, it depends where you draw the line as where the players are produced as footballers or where they're from before that. What I will say about following the Premiership is it's always really endearing that there's always, like, every team has some local juniors coming through. Like, there's no doubt, like, it's not like everyone is either from Auckland or Wellington or maybe a few from Christchurch. Like, there's plenty of good players coming out of Dunedin, out of Napier, out of, et cetera, out of Hamilton, and maybe not so many male footballers coming out of Northland, but there's several in the women's team who are from Northland. Abby Ersig's from Northland, Hannah Wilkinson, Katie Rood, they're all Northlanders. So I think the moral of the story there is that it's actually really well spread out. Like, you wouldn't necessarily think it when you look at where the power bases lie, but in terms of where actual players are coming from, it's pretty diverse, to be honest.
I'm glad of that Freudian slip now, because there's always going to be the heavy Auckland presence in the NRL, but it's very applicable to compare it to football, because I mean, there's a pretty clear crop of, like, these are the best players for the Kiwis, like, especially forward. So you've got Joseph Tapine and Nelson Asofa-Solomona. They're from Wellington. Jordan Ricky is from Canterbury. James Fisher-Harris is from Northland. And they are, like, cream of the crop as far as Kiwi forward talent goes. And none of them are from Auckland. The likes of Joey Manu, he's from Tokoroa, but I think now we're seeing that these regions are starting to get some of the attention in the sporting prowess, and perhaps this also plays into the idea of there just being more options available now, because it makes sense just due to population and, population and opportunity, that the vast array of sporting options that we now have, that kind of had to flow through New Zealand maybe. And it's to the point now where, like, out in the regions where it used to be rugby and netball, maybe cricket in the summer, now a bunch of different sports are available, which we're seeing in basketball with the a lot of the players you've alluded to with college stuff, and whether it's football as well. Rugby league is pretty much, like, these sports are genuinely blowing up as far as the talent they are producing for professional ranks, and it's hugely beneficial to New Zealand sport generally. So, hey, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here to document and share. So make sure you stay tapped in to Kiwi sporting business, because it is blowing up. Explosions, kapow, of New Zealand Aotearoa sport. We'll be back with the variety show early next week. Enjoy the weekend of Kiwi sporting matters. Kia kaha, stay beautiful. Che che.